morning and welcome to SIGCSE Morning Coffee, the show all about everything going on at the 2021 SIGCSE Technical Symposium. From Charlottesville, Virginia, I'm Mark Sheriff. Happy St. Patrick's Day there, Larry. Larry? Are you wearing your green today, Larry? What's wrong? Larry? Larry, is there something wrong?
Mark, where's your body?
I'm right here. What are you talking about? I'm right here.
You're a disembodied head and arms.
Oh my green screen. Be right back. Sorry. I'm coming.
That's better.
So that's why the news anchors never wear green, or whether people never wear green, huh?
I guess so.
Well, it's day 3. It's Wednesday. Well, Larry, let's take a look at everything that is going on today at the Technical Symposium, Wednesday, March 17th. You're already here for SIGCSE Morning Coffee, and thankfully, all of me is now here too. At the 1 o'clock session, we have quite the logjam of exciting things going on. Not only do we have a session that has 2 of the best papers in it, the data science session, we have a number of panels on diversity that we think you're probably going to want to go to as well. It's always a challenge to choose which thing to go to, no matter which SIGCSE you go to. This is still the case.
It is. Of course, this time, what you're deciding is which one you want to go to in real time. You do get to watch the recordings of all of the sessions later,
which is fantastic. Do know, though, that we are going to take the recordings and send them off for closed captioning. So they might not be posted immediately after. It might take up to 24 hours, depending how long the closed captioning takes. So be a little patient with us as we get those up and posted, but they will be there, we promise. Tons of supporter sessions today, more than the previous days, because we're getting into the bulk of the supporters. And so Microsoft, Codio, Gradescope, Replit, Replete, heard it both ways now, Twilio, and Zybooks. Go by these sessions. Make sure you're checking the supporter sessions tab at the symposium website, sigsc2021.org, to get full descriptions of all these sessions. You can also find them in your Pathable agenda. Stop by, see what they're all about. It's just like stopping by when you are on the show floor. Great information being shared there. Poster session 3, the last night of Birds of a Feather. So you got both flocks A and B. Oh my gosh. Being able to go to 6 different Birds of a Feather sessions is so wonderful. So make sure you're still taking care of that. And then tonight, 8 o'clock, another keynote from our good friend Steve Edwards at Virginia Tech, the winner of this year's SIGCSE Award for Outstanding Contributions to Computer Science Education. He is going to be here talking about automated grading. Steve Edwards and his team created WebCat back in the early 2000s. It's been going on for a long time. And so he's going to be here to share his ideas about that. And he's told us, I haven't got a chance to see it yet, Larry. I don't know if you've looked at it yet, but he actually has pre-recorded his talk, and he's going to be live in the chat answering questions while you are watching it. So it's going to be a different experience than the previous keynotes, and I'm pretty excited about it.
He's making the most of the platform. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, taking nothing away from our folks who are doing their keynotes live, which is also cool, but the fact that he is doing this kind of live premiere sort of maneuver, pretty cool.
It's cutting edge.
It is. Leave it to those folks at Virginia Tech to pull that off, says the person from University of Virginia.
It's a good thing that Virginia has at least one great school, right?
Oh, okay. All right. What was that, Larry? I'm about to mute you off the show. Okay.
I said at least
one. Okay. All right. As always, thank you so much to our supporters for making all of this happen at this technical symposium and for SIGCSE Morning Coffee. When we come back, we will be back with the interview. Stay tuned.
And we're back with more morning coffee. Joining us now from Blacksburg, Virginia is Steve Edwards, the 2021 recipient of the SIGCSE Award for Outstanding Contributions to Computer Science Education. Steve, welcome to SIGCSE Morning Coffee. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Oh, it is wonderful to have you here. And first, of course, from all of us in the SIGCSE community, congratulations. Well deserved, well earned. We are all very excited to see your keynote speech on Wednesday night at 8:00. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about in your keynote talk?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the award. I can't tell you how humbling it is to get it from the community. It's so great. In the talk that I'm going to do, I'm actually going to be trying to inspire people to think about new directions for how we give feedback to our students. And, people probably know that I spend a lot of time dealing with automated feedback and researching new ways of generating automated feedback. But I want to talk about how we could do that better. And I want to nudge people in the direction of thinking about behavioral design and how we should engineer things to change behavior, not just give students information, but think about the educational impact that we want our feedback to have, and how can we systematically include that in all the ways that we give feedback.
I mean, certainly when most people see your name, they think of automated feedback because they're also thinking of WebCat, because they'll see the @vt.edu email at the end of all that stuff. And we've, of course, used WebCat at University of Virginia, and it's been, I'm assuming, all over the world at various different. Can you tell us a little bit about how WebCat got started? And also, where did the name come from? I've worried about this for years and was just embarrassed to ask, but I'll just do it on a public YouTube video. Why not?
Sure, yeah. And so WebCat's been around since 2003. And so it's getting up there now, but it's gone through a number of generations since then. It originally started as a reaction to some limitations with some automated grading tools that we were using at Virginia Tech at the time. And one of the issues was, automated feedback helps students fix things, helps them find mistakes, make a lot of, feedback, edit, revise kind of cycles before they turn in the final version of their code, which is great. But it turns out if you only grade them on whether their program produces the correct output, that can shift what students pay attention to and have some negative consequences. And so we were reacting to that. We came up with a different idea about how to do things. But the system actually started in a graduate software engineering project class. And it was one of the topics that I proposed for the teams in the class to pursue. And it turned out that there were a couple of people in the class who were very motivated, and they convinced all of the teams in the class to work together on one project.
Wow.
And
Wow.
they just carved it up into different pieces so that different teams within the class could work on different pieces and be evaluated independently. And I got very, motivated by their energy and spent some time working with them closely on the design, making sure that all the groups got the mentoring they need. And it was a great success as a software engineering class, but then we went to use it live. And that was good for, fleshing out a lot of the initial ideas. A lot of those students had experience as TAs and had already used auto graders in classes that they were working on, and they knew things they didn't like and were very motivated about improving things. So that's kind of how it got started, but I had to do more with it to help it be robust enough to kind of withstand use at scale. And one of those students decided to go on after the class and do a master's thesis and put some more effort into it. And then I got other students involved, and over a period of time, we just kept building on it. And I probably had at least one or two graduate students doing research work with WebCat over the entire 18-year period since then.
Wow. So Steve, can you tell us where the name came from?
Right. Well, in that software engineering class, we had to come up with a name. And names are such an important thing. We ended up having a class brainstorming session where we were thinking about what to name it. We ended up coming up with a lot of phrases, a lot of keywords that we wanted to consider, but we were looking for a good acronym as well. And we ended up with the Web-Based Center for Automated Testing.
Okay.
WebCat, web for the web-based Center for Automated Testing is how the name actually originated. And I can't say that I was completely in love with the name, but it was the best that we came up with in our brainstorming. And it's really
how many
stuck.
student projects or even professional projects have gone that way, where we just come up with an acronym as best we can, roll with it, but it's stuck.
Yeah, and it's worked out pretty well. And naming projects turns out it's always a pain, but it can be pretty fun, especially when you have those brainstorming sessions and you get people sitting around a chalkboard writing down ideas.
Cool. So where do you see automated testing going forward in undergraduate education?
Well, automated testing I should say testing in general has gradually gone from a fringe topic to something that most people consider to be a central part of teaching programming. And I think that's only going to get better. There are a lot of ways that we can improve things, and probably we're still at the stage where a lot of educators are struggling with what's the best way to teach how to do it better. Right? Which is different than the idea of how do you automatically assess or how do you run tests or that sort of thing, but more how do you keep students focused on the ideas that they need to keep in mind when they're testing, and how do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them from developing negative opinions, like thinking testing is useless busy work, or thinking that it's something extra that they have to do that's not an essential part of what they're doing, right? Keeping students in that mode of thinking everything people produce has errors. And whether you're writing something for a newspaper or doing some other kind of activity, you do have to go over your own work. You have to self-check things. You have to eliminate as many of the problems as you can find, but it's never completely error-free, right? There's always going to be something hiding in there, and you just have to do your best with the most economical techniques, to get the 80% of the easy ones out that you can. And I think that's where we're at right now, is how do we educate students on that perspective and keep them from slipping in the idea of thinking it's just busy work that they don't need to do. Every student believes their program is correct. Every student believes their program works perfectly. Every student starts out thinking, why do I need to test this? I know it works.
Do you find students rely on sort of that automated, getting feedback constantly, using that as sort of a way to, advance their programs, as opposed to thinking through what are all the cases they need to consider? Like, let me try this, let me try that. And then things come back.
That was part of the original problem back in 2003 when we started, right? If you give students an auto-grader that tells them whether the program behaves correctly, actually what you just did is relieve them of the responsibility of figuring out whether the program works correctly, right? That's no longer their problem. They have a perfect oracle that they can ask. Right. It may not be perfect, but from their point of view, in terms of getting a grade on the assignment, it's perfect.
Exactly.
And why would they think about it themselves and possibly make a judgment that's different when they have a tool that they can use that will give them the exact answer that actually matters, right? And unfortunately, relieving students of the responsibility for determining whether their program works correctly, not necessarily the best thing, right? Because if it's not their responsibility, they don't need to develop that skill, and they don't need to, personally judge, are they doing a good job at it? What could they do to improve at it? Because it's not their job any longer. So you don't want that, right? And that was kind of the whole reason why in my 2004 SIGCSE paper, I was trying to say, by grading students on how well they self-check their own work, you can change the emphasis and say, oh no, it's not about does your program produce the correct answer or not. It's about what evidence did you provide that your program produces the correct answer. Because then they do have to think about it. Now, it turns out that still you have that problem in that depending on how you evaluate their tests, students might think certain artifacts of the testing process are more important than the underlying idea of finding errors or showing that the program behaves correctly. And that's a continuing battle. We keep finding new ways of addressing that problem, but I think a lot of it has to do with the feedback, right? And again, this goes back to my talk. If you just point out problems, if you just point out errors, if you just point out things that are not tested well enough, or you find things that are not executed by the student's tests, or even just in terms of output, if the program doesn't produce the correct output under some conditions and you point that out, that doesn't necessarily help the student learn, right? It's not just there's a mistake. It's why is it a mistake? What skills does the student need to focus on so that they can prevent those kinds of mistakes in the future? How can the student improve? Not how can their answer be more correct, right? So yeah, that is a continual problem that students will work to the criteria that they're evaluated on. And if you automate things, you have to be constantly aware that that may shift student attention in a way that might be negative.
Do you believe student opinions on testing have changed since you started WebCat? I'm thinking mainly of as we move more to software as a service and off and doing these, they're seeing that the actual software engineering process means working through an entire spectrum of tasks where the software is constantly in production and constantly there's a test version. We're not creating that box copy anymore. We were talking about testing a decade ago, more about here are the tests to make sure it's within some level operational profile, et cetera, before we ship it. But now it's such a constant process. Do you think that the fact that our students now recognize, most of them at least, recognize that software is more in that software as a service, that testing doesn't have that stigma and they're more willing to play in the testing?
No.
No. Well then, thank you for joining us on SIGCSE Morning Coffee.
Well, so what it is remember that, most students, when they start out in their curriculum, don't have that experience. And what they see in their early classes doesn't necessarily change their opinions about testing very much. It's what they acquire through experience, through their undergraduate years, through their internships, and after they go into their first job. That experience does change their opinion significantly, right? So the experience that you're talking about really matters. It's just they typically don't have that experience in the classroom, and they don't have that experience early in their academic career. So it takes time for that change to happen. And I talk to students all the time who, actually the story they'll give me is, oh yeah, WebCat, I remember that when I was an undergrad. I hated it. And then they'll turn around and tell me how now they appreciate testing so much more. And they were so glad that they had that experience because it helped them later. But at the time that they were doing it, they didn't appreciate it.
Like, and so everything we teach in a software engineering class typically is what we get.
Yeah, it's a very common kind of perspective. And, it is reassuring to hear people later say, oh, now I realize that was beneficial. Does it have an effect right at the immediate time? They're focused on other things, I think.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us today, Steve, and congratulations again on the award. It's a great honor to see you receive this, and we're looking forward to your talk on Wednesday.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this time too. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for watching this morning.
Be sure to tune in tomorrow.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.